Hello, and welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast. My guest today is the consultant and well-known author of the book Destination Leadership, published in 2004. He was born in Hawaii and grew up just south of Chicago. In his role as CEO of the Greater Madison CVB, he led the drive to build the Frank Lloyd Wright-designed Monona Terrace Convention Center in Wisconsin, an asset that transformed Madison's lakefront and established its place as a cultural and national icon. If you haven't already figured it out, my guest today is Bill Geist, Chief Instigator at DMOproz, author of Destination Leadership, host of the DMOU podcast, and that's just the short list. Bill, how are you? Where are you? And what's it like there right now?
Under the circumstances, doing great, and thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you today. We're in Madison, Wisconsin, actually just north of Madison out in the country, looking out over a lake, and we have our first 65-degree day today, so life is good.
65 degrees is great. Being up here in Canada, I think I concur. Our friend and producer, Alton Wells, who's on the line, I think consistently regales me with it's 100 degrees in Tucson.
Right.
There it is. Bill, I want to start with this. In January this year, well before the COVID-19 crisis was even on the radar of most people, you wrote a post on your Zeitgeist site about the struggles in Sedona, Arizona in 2018. As the DMO fought to reestablish and reimagine its role under serious civic assault. In a comment about your post, Bill Baker, the author of Place Branding for Small Cities, Regions, and Downtowns, wrote, DMOs are going to find themselves at the crucial junction between economic sustainability and environmental sustainability. Some communities may mistakenly try to demolish their DMO and its budget in a futile attempt to stop the growth of tourism. Instead, they should possibly be reconsidering the vision, mission, and role of the organization and its budget to better manage these complexities. Others will have to follow Sedona's example. Bill, what happened in Sedona and what has changed over the last 18 months?
You know, Sedona was an interesting look into that concept of over-tourism. And of course, we hate that term because it really isn't over-tourism. It's badly managed tourism. And during the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service, Sedona is on the way to a pretty big national park. And what they found themselves experiencing were a lot of day trippers who really were not coming for Sedona, but they were stopping off for lunch, get a few trinkets, and move on. Not the traditional Sedona visitor. And ultimately, the residents just threw up their hands that summer and said, "No mas, we're done. This is not fun anymore. We don't want to live here. This is terrible." And they took aim at the Bureau, assuming that the Bureau had been the result or had been the reason for this to happen. In reality, the Bureau had not been marketing summer for years, but they were the destination marketing organization. And talking to Jennifer, the CEO there, was fascinating because she goes, everybody we talked to, city council, our business partners, our board, understood the numbers, understood what we were doing, and kept saying, more, you're doing great, keep it up. This is exactly what we want, because they were filling shoulder season. But that's not what Joe and Jill Public thought. And she realized, she said, and we all did collectively, that we weren't speaking to Joe and Jill. And they didn't understand what we were doing. And this really, it gets right back to Jack Johnson and Destinations International and the whole shared community value that really, at the end of the day, who is our primary customer? And it's our residents. And as we are all learning this kind of new reality, I think the Sedona story is one that really shows that you can turn things around, because the beauty is they immediately pivoted. Actually, they were beginning to already look for a sustainability model a year or so before, and came out with a sustainability model. There are 4 pillars. There were 2 before, and now their sustainability is the other 2 pillars. And the community, the people who were the most vicious online and in social during that moment in time, have said, okay, good on you. But you heard us. Great. We're on board. This sounds like a great plan. And the Chamber Bureau there is doing great work. And I mean, luckily they realized at that moment in time that they had a problem, and they moved quickly to identify it, deal with it, and move forward. And now is one of the sustainability models we always point to.
Well, and in your blog, you said the DMO heard the complaints and moved rapidly to develop a long-term sustainability plan. And that takes real stakeholder engagement and stakeholder engagement outside the conventional bandwidth of tourism stakeholders. There really is no alternative in a modern tourism destination to actually purpose-built stakeholder networks, is there?
I don't think so. And oftentimes I'll encourage the boards I work with at DMOs to think like a 3-year-old and ask questions like a 3-year-old, because if a 3-year-old asks you a question, you know that 17 more are coming, because the first answer is not going to be good enough. And that's kind of where I years ago began to realize that it was residents at the end of the day, because I was thinking of my own daughter who said, why do you do what you do? And I said, well, to bring people to town. Well, why? Well, to fill hotels. Well, why? Well, to put people to work. Well, why? Well, to generate non-resident taxes. Well, what? And all of a sudden, after 17 questions, you get down to quality of life. That's what this is. This is quality of life and making our communities better for residents.
Well, and you referenced the great work that we've had over the past sort of 6 years with Destination Next. And I'm a big champion of the fact that I think it elevated the concept of stakeholder engagement to a level that it truly deserves to be recognized at. But I will put it to you, Bill Geist, you've been working on stakeholder engagement for well more than a decade. It's not easy to do. Sometimes people say, well, I don't know how to do that. That's a reason not to do it, but it's not the reason not to do it. As you work at stakeholder engagement, what have you seen over the past sort of 10 years in terms of how it's actually penetrating tourism? And is it, I see traction, but I'm fresh to this game compared to you. Do you see the traction increasing? Do you see it actually becoming the relevant tool that it is here that it already is in Europe, for example, with the ECM group?
I think we do have examples around the country, and you can go to smaller destinations like Rockford, Illinois, that has stepped up in things that a DMO would never have done in the past. Community cleanup, leading the charge to uplight the Riverwalk, creating an event that heralds the holiday season every year, things that the city needed to do, but didn't have the ability or the bandwidth to do. And so the Bureau stepped in and said, if not us, who? And then you go all the way to the other side, to a true tourism destination in every sense of the word, and that's Anaheim. And what Jay Burris and his team have done with Anaheim Cares is they are giving back in droves to the community to help homeless, to help communities, to help neighborhoods, with a lot of really innovative programs. So, we're seeing great examples, and I think each destination marketing organization can take a cue from these destinations and these communities and these individuals that have realized the bigger picture. And I think, begin to emulate some of those programs. It comes down to, and I had this conversation the other day. We're assisting with a contract renegotiation between a DMO and a city, and the question came up was, what is it that you really want? And the city kind of took a step back and they said, well, what do you mean? Well, what do you want? Do you want more visitors? They go, well, I don't know. Do you want more economic development? I mean, what is it that you want? And at the end of the conversation, it was, we want non-resident taxes. Okay, great. Let's figure out a way to do that for you. And I think the answer of what is it that you want is going to be different in every single destination.
Well, and it's certainly going to be different over the next 18, 24, 36 months. Absolutely, in the face of this crisis. I want to talk a little bit about something that's really close to your heart. Building on those ideas of relevance and sustainability, let's talk about funding models. And it's a delicate subject that we often dance around in this industry. It's private and it has lots of implications. It's not uncommon in the history of DMOs in the US for DMOs to face existential crises. We're painfully aware of the multiple past and present examples, but in this time, in this COVID-19 crisis, there's a simultaneous existential crisis across all tourism entities, DMOs included. And the word unprecedented doesn't even do it justice. In April, well into the crisis, on your DMO University podcast with Julie Hart, president of CFO by Design, you talked about something that was really, as I said, close to your heart and something that you've been working on and advocating for more than a decade. The diversification of partnerships and revenue streams for the DMMO has always been front and center for you. You point out that bureaus, when they're working well, work with and for a multiplicity of segments of the community. Funding models that are tied to accommodation alone don't reflect the role and function of the successful DMMO today. All of that, as Julie Hart points out, has been amplified in this crisis. What do you see as the opportunities and challenges as we work to reinvent our budgets and our organizations?
I think I realized the problem we had, to your point, 10 or 15 years ago. I was working with a board of directors of a DMO, and they had just brought on the president of one of the banks. And as he's going through the financials, I mean, you could just see his jaw drop, rather, because he said, wait, there's only one revenue source. That's it. That's all you got. Yeah. And of course, at that point in time, we never thought that, we'd have this kind of pandemic impact. But even in good times, he said, this isn't sustainable. You've got to figure out another way. And so that it hit me right in the face. And I realized that he was absolutely right in that assessment of how we were doing this. And now you add on layer after layer that, one of the things that DMOs are accused of is carrying water for hotels. And, that is our revenue source by and large for most of us. And so, yeah, that's what a tourism improvement district is based on usually, and that's what the hotel room tax is based on. I've been saying for a long time that if in fact what we do is important to a community, then why should we be limited to room tax or occupancy tax? Why is the general fund not used as a source of funding for so many of us? Because we are so important to creating those non-resident revenues that power city services that we all want. It's a hard one because, I'm back to Joe and Jill again. Joe and Jill Public don't understand the power of marketing and how important it is to what we do for, new residents, for new entrepreneurs, new investors, for everything that we've all learned from the Longwoods Halo study will emanate from a really successful destination marketing program. So I think we need to be looking for every possible revenue stream. And, a lot of destinations have done some pretty innovative things. I look to, Salt Lake City, who had a moment where, and a lot of this comes down to where's the pain point, right? There's always a pain point that maybe marketing can be the answer. And so the pain point in Salt Lake City at one point in time, about 10 years ago, was that there were a lot of people who really needed a one single, really robust calendar of events. So robust that it got down to club dates at night. A lot of our calendar of events are okay, but I've always maintained that most of us do a really good job on our websites up until 6 p.m. and a really lousy job after 6 p.m. because the club dates aren't there. But club dates are really hard. It's really time intensive to do that. Well, So Scott Beck, the CEO at the time, said, well, we can't be the only ones that want a calendar. He went out and he found 5 other organizations that were just as desperate for a great arts and culture calendar and said, look, you put in 20, you put in 20, you put in 20. And so everybody had enough money. They didn't have to hire their own person, but Scott would. And he says, I'll make sure I do the calendar and we'll send the feed out to each one of you. And so he's actually, at the end of the day, he was making money on getting something that he wanted for his website because he found other partners to be a part of it. Now you take something like that, which is fairly small, and then you move to what Tulsa, Oklahoma has done. Now, where's the pain point in Tulsa? Well, 10 years ago, it was that most people, white collar, MBAs, engineers, healthcare workers, they didn't want to live in Tulsa. I mean, there's tumbleweed going down the street, right? Well, that's not true. And if you've been to Tulsa, you know what a cool, sophisticated music town it is. But if you'd never been there or never seen the advertising, and they only had at the time like a $3 million budget, you could be excused for not understanding that if there's a job offer in Tulsa, you should take a look at this. So what the business community needed in Tulsa was an image campaign. And so 50 some corporations, not hospitality, this is corporate Tulsa, 50 some organizations got together, wrote checks that collectively come this year to about $2 million for an image campaign, which is what we do, right? So why shouldn't we be the ad agency for the city? It doesn't have to be about visitors. It has to be about quality of life.
Well, those are two great examples, and I'm gonna take the opportunity to call out Scott Beck, who will tell you he just hates the term DMMO, Destination Management and Marketing Organization. But I don't think there's a better destination manager out there than Scott Beck. The work he did in Salt Lake that you cite is remarkable. The work he's been able to do in a short time in Toronto to realign Tourism Toronto with the City of Toronto is remarkable. And it comes down to, again, engaging people, finding multiple sources of contribution, call it revenue if you like. But it comes back again to that whole idea of a wide spectrum of stakeholder engagement. And as you look at the budget challenges that Julie talked about, how do you realign at a time when you're probably down 50, maybe more, maybe even as high as 60, 70 or more percent of your budget? What would you do?
Well, I think part of it is going to, the pain points. Who needs us the most? Who is going to rely on us to lead the movement back out of this crevasse? And so, I think in the short term, it's going to be the private sector, and it's going to be corporate private sector. And hopefully it's, in your town, you've got that not only civic minded, but also someone who understands economic development and why this isn't you said the word contribution. I think we need to move beyond contribution. I think this needs to be an investment. I think that's the word that has to be used to, major employers that may, as the ramp up comes back, maybe they need, workforce development. Maybe they need image, whatever it is. I think we need to turn to the private sector to diversify, because government is going to increasingly, and this is the whole point behind the tourism improvement districts, is that we can no longer, I don't think, rely on government revenues because they're being called on in so many different ways. And there was a great book a number of years ago by a guy named Quint Studer out of Pensacola. And he says, we can no longer rely on government to lead the development of our communities. It has to be the private sector. Government has a role. They shouldn't abdicate that role. But, they're 2-year, 4-year, 8-year cycles, and they're gone. And some of the really great projects in our community will take a decade to get underway. Yep. And so their tenure just works against us. And so we need to find people who are invested in the community, who understand what's going on, to take that first move. And then hopefully government matches us. I mean, so long it's been government puts up money, we match it with private. I think it's going to be the other way around.
Talk about that. When you worked on that incredible project in Madison, the Monona Terrace, how long did it take?
Well, it took 50 years because he proposed it in 1938.
There it is, right?
But in 1990, we had a mayor who, honestly, one of the best mayors I could ever have hoped to work for. And he said, something, I know this thing has failed 3 or 4 times over its 50-year lifespan. He goes, let's give it one more shot. Let's see if we can make this work for Madison. So we had the mayor behind us to start, that was a great start. But It then took 2 years to bring it to public referendum, another year to get the funding package put together, which was, one consultant said, the most diverse funding package he'd ever seen. And so we actually started the campaign, started our work in the summer of 90 and opened in the summer of 97.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said about single source budgets, and you referenced Jack Johnson's work, which I know we both hold in very, very high regard. In some sense, I think Jack would echo that single source funding is one of those things that has unintentionally promulgated a lack of community engagement. It means you don't go out looking to engage and justify and rationalize what you do. Do you see that?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that we advocate for a board that is not just hoteliers, because that only makes it, even more of a single source special interest group running the show. We want to make sure that the board is as diverse as possible, because that hopefully will open up new revenue streams from the restaurant community, the retail community, and, maybe even the medical community. I know that in Spokane, one of the biggest hospitals hooked up with the Bureau a number of years ago for a wellness program with a bicycle service. And, it was a great way for the Bureau to hook up visitors that may not want to be driving downtown or in the neighborhoods, but hook them up with bikes. And the hospital was excited because they got the visibility and they could, show their wellness chops, if you will. So I think that diversity from a board perspective, from a revenue perspective, is going to be crucial going forward. And I think this is that moment in time. I mean, we keep looking for the silver lining of this. And the silver lining should be that nobody can now say that travel and hospitality isn't crucial to the overall economy. There was that moment in 9/11 where everything stopped, but everything got going again real fast. This is not going to be real fast. And I think that the pain is going to be pretty clear to people, and they're going to be looking for solutions.
Well, Bill, I've always had this vision in my head at a national level here in Canada that, our Destination Canada, formerly Canadian Tourism Commission, drops a rope from 30,000 feet down to about 10,000 feet to attract international visitors. And then our provincial or state organizations, they take that rope from 10,000 feet and ostensibly they drop it right down to the ground, just to the DMO. And then just after that, the DMO takes it to the operator. And we all know that last 100 feet is missing and has been missing for decades. But this device, the tourism wizard device known as the telephone, makes it so much easier to connect with that operator. And I think in the future, the most successful destinations will have seamless integration with those operators. But again, that's stakeholder engagement. You've got to bring those people to the table. You've got to share the messaging. And what I really appreciate what you've been doing for quite a while at the granular level is the hardest job in tourism, if you ask me, because you're building. I'm not saying a tower. You're trying to push a rope up to 100 feet so that the DMO and the state organization can get a hold of it when it comes time, right? It's hard work.
Yeah, but it's valuable work, and it's work that we love, because, that moment when you see a board or a community leader where the light bulb goes on, that's worth everything. That's that moment that we think, okay, we're actually getting through. And this is a really hard concept. Jack says on a number of occasions, and I think he was the first person to say it, but we all laughed, right, for years, that our family and our friends have no idea what we do. Well, if our family and friends don't know, how the hell is the city councilor going to know, or the biggest influencer in town, or the biggest manufacturer in town that needs our help in marketing the community? So, this is the moment in time. And I was on a call earlier this week and with Jack, actually, and he made the point. He goes, even the hoteliers don't understand what a DMO does. I mean, on the surface, they understand that we bring them leads and we help them, score business, but they really don't understand how hard what we do is compared to what they do, to the point that oftentimes when a hotelier gets a DMO gig, his or her peers will say, well, have fun in your retirement because you got a cush job. So, and I was going to add it, and we were running out of time on the call. And I said, when I was back in Madison, I would hire hotel salespeople, the good ones, to bring them onto our team for the destination. And I would meet them on Monday morning. I would greet them. I would welcome them. I'd hand them off to the VP of sales, and I would completely stay away from them until Friday. And on Friday afternoon, I'd pop my head in their office and go, how's it going? And typically they'd be going, oh my God, I've never worked so hard in my life. It's like, exactly.
There's a method to your madness, Bill Geist. You said you're motivated and charged about this, so I'm gonna give you the Groundhog Day question. Bill, it's Groundhog Day. You wake up, you're 35 years old. You look great in a shark skin suit. You're running a successful DMO in a mid-sized market that has a strong position in mid-sized meetings, cultural attractions, seasonal transient tourism, and you're faced with a drastic revenue cut. And I'm going to tell you this time, in the hypothetical case, it's almost 70%. Your hotels are projecting out a year and a half at somewhere between 15 and 40% on a good day, but probably on the lower end. There's a prolonged drought coming, impending local business failures when you look left and right. It's Monday morning and 35-year-old Bill Geist gets to work. What do you do? Where do you start?
I hate to be the broken record here, but it's where's the pain? And go and fix the pain. Go be the solution to whatever that problem is. And I think the money follows. I'll get back to the fact that it's probably not going to be government in the short term at that moment in time. It's going to be private sector, or we're going to have to figure out a way to generate money from the little guys, the little girls, the small entrepreneurs that, maybe it's $100 here and it's $100 there, but there really is something to be said about, a partnership program, not a membership program where, the members get visibility and the non-members don't, because we all know that hurts us all in the end. But, is it $50? Is it $100? Is it, I'll provide these services to you and pay me next year, like that old Popeye character, right? I mean, it's going to be identifying every possible revenue source that one can.
So let's take this out of the realm of revenue sources, because I know you would bloodhound the revenues. But what do you want to do? You've been trying to advocate for a number of changes for a long time. Changes to the way boards govern themselves, changes to financials models, changes to product development strategies, changes to shoulder season strategies. So here we are in a disrupted environment. We're all in a tough spot. Certainly we go out and we find a way to share the revenue burden among us. But what opportunities and tools do you bring? I know you're going to say it's the pain piece again, but what things has this crisis sort of sped up for you? For me, it's sped up stakeholder engagement. There's no question that the destinations that have purpose-built stakeholder networks are doing better than the ones without. But there you are in your mid-sized market. You had a meetings business that was doing okay. Your cultural stuff was good. Your seasonal transient's good. You're looking at 2 tough years. What do you do?
I think this gets us back to saying, if we could only do one thing, what's it going to be? And we identify that. And I would probably, in most cases, and every destination is different, we know that. In most cases, I'm going to say that I'm going to lean leisure, because, and maybe it's not even leisure, maybe it's brand. I'm going to lead to communicating that this is one hell of a destination, one hell of a community, and meeting planners and event planners and group leaders, they're consumers too. So with any kind of luck, they're going to hear that message. Whereas if I put all of my revenues over into where we traditionally have kind of defaulted to, which is meetings and conventions, not unlike Oakland, a number of years ago, when Allie Best got to Oakland, she said, there's 23 hotel salespeople already in the market working the same database as I am. Maybe we should pivot and do something different. And so for a period of time, Oakland didn't have any convention salespeople. They had convention services people, because that was where they could make a difference, more so than just being a lead farm. This is no disrespect to those on the sales side of what we do. Love them. But if I'm down to nothing, I got to pick the one thing I can do, be visible doing, show results in doing. And then from there, do I have any other cash for the next most important thing? And then the next, and then slowly build the organization back. But I still think the organizations are going to look different in 2 or 3 years. I think there's going to be positions we never dreamed of. And I think that there's going to be some sacred cows that are going to be gone.
Well, and you talk about, in your hypothetical destination, zeroing in on a leisure market. I want to underline that knowing Bill and knowing his track record, he doesn't mean take all your money and spend it advertising. He means do things that strengthen your leisure market, that leverage the DNA that you might have, whether it's a beachfront or an incredible series of sand dunes, or you've got the singing caves, and amplify those at the product level so that the consumer can help you market them.
Right. It's about brand. That's
Absolutely.
At our core, that's who we are. We're the brand managers of our destinations and communities.
Well, and I heard it. I have a great destination brand, modern destination brand, and that is if it fits in the sum total of shared stories and experiences about that destination, then it's a brand piece.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for being here. It's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure.
Hey, thank you. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you, and for all you're doing with the Future of Tourism Group. We're really excited to see what you guys come up with.
Well, you're gonna be part of that. So you get out what you put in. So let's work on that. But any parting thoughts? Anything you want to share while you have the floor?
Well, it's stereotypical to say, but there will be a day that we're out of this and we're in a new world. A new normal is being said a lot. We're just the ones to do it. I got to tell you, I was, when you get to about 10 o'clock at night, you just got to put the laptop down and just say, I'm just going to watch some mindless TV. And so Terry and I were banging around the other night, and we stumbled onto Pluto TV and the Val Kilmer, Jim Morrison, The Doors movie. And there's that moment when Val, Jim, says, "I'm the Lizard King. I can do anything." And it's like, that's us. That's us. That's the DMO. Every CEO of a DMO needs to be the Lizard King and just go back into the fray and say, we're gonna make this the way we wanted to make it because this is our opportunity.
I think those are great words to live by, and I see it happening. I see a lot of leaders stepping up and not just waiting for what happens next, but actually shaping the future. Bill, it's been a great pleasure. I'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, great. Thank you so much. All the best. Stay well.